we are going to start the program of this afternoon in a few minutes. First of all, I would like to request everybody to either switch off their mobile phones or to put them on silent mode. Before the program begins, we will have the national anthem. So I would request everybody to stand at attention for the national anthem. As many of us are aware, this is the second lecture of the Prime Minister's lecture series, for which we have the privilege and honor of having with us the Honorable Governor of Kerala, Shri Arif Mohammed Khan Sahib today. I would now like to request our Honorable Chairman, Shri Nipendra Mishra ji, to deliver the welcome address. Sir.
I, on behalf of Nehru Memorial Museum and Library family, extend a very warm welcome to Honorable Governor of Kerala, Shri Arif Mohammed Khan, who has very kindly accepted our invitation to deliver the second lecture of Prime Minister's lecture series titled Life and Legacy of Jawaharlal Nehru. I also extend a very warm welcome to all other distinguished guests present here who have taken the trouble, in spite of heat which is being reported in the papers and is actually there. You are all here, and that is very encouraging to us. Just to say a few words about Honorable Governor. He completed his BA honors from Aligarh Muslim University and LLB from Lucknow University. He is a well-known scholar and writer. He is the author of the best-selling book of the year 2010, Text and Context, Quran and Contemporary Challenges. Honorable Governor of Kerala has a long and distinguished political career. He has been a member of the Union Council of Ministers and held several portfolios. He became a member of the Legislative Assembly of UP in 1977 at the age of 26, one of the youngest then to have been elected. Shri Khan was elected to the Lok Sabha in 1980 from Kanpur and 1984 from Bahraich. On a personal note, my wife comes from Bahraich district, and it is since 1984 that we had developed a very family relationship with Honorable Governor. He later, after that, got re-elected to Lok Sabha in 1989 In between, as you all know, he had to quit the Indian National Congress due to differences over the passage of Muslim personal law. In 1989, he served as minister in the Janata Dal government. He again entered the Lok Sabha in 1998 from Bahraich. We are all conversant and we all know he is a strong voice. He has been a strong voice, an opinion maker in favor of social reform and modernization in the society. Shri Khan has been critical of blind imposition of social practices and has often welcomed the government initiatives on social reform. Honorable Governor Sir, Pradhan Mantri Sangrahalaya, which is one of the extensions of this institution, is a tribute to and a narrative record of the contribution of each of the prime ministers to the development of our nation over the last 75 years. It is a history of collective effort and powerful evidence of the creative success of Indian democracy. Each one left an important footprint on the journey of development, social harmony, and economic empowerment that has enabled India to give true meaning to freedom. The logo of the Sangrahalaya represents the hands of the people of India holding the Dharma Chakra, symbolizing the nation and democracy. Conceptualized as the institution of national importance, it uses a state-of-the-art digital display for narrating the history of contemporary India through its prime ministers in order to effectively engage a wide spectrum of audience with varied interests and also curate memorable cultural experiences. The Sangrahalaya is a source of knowledge and inspiration, especially for the youth of the country. Since its opening in April 2022, it has attracted more than 3.5 lakh visitors from India and abroad. We are very happy that Honorable Governor has given his consent to visit Sangrahalaya on some other occasion. Further, this society has now decided to merge the existing planetarium, which has long been a popular destination in Delhi, with the Sangrahalaya in order to offer a single, seamless, educative, as well as inspirational experience to the visitors. The planetarium has recently introduced 3D shows which provide a much more visually rich and immersive experience to the viewers. As a result, the planetarium has witnessed a further surge in its popularity. Visitors are eagerly awaiting the opening of Modi Gallery. Presently, it is a work in progress. In near future, visitors will have the satisfaction of seeing and engaging with the life and contribution of Prime Minister Modi. Governor Sir, as part of the academic activities, the Pradhan Mantri Sangrahalaya has started a Prime Minister's lecture series. The inaugural lecture of the series was delivered in January by former President of India, Shri Ramnath Kovind. This is the second lecture of the series for which we are privileged to have you, Honorable Governor, in the midst of us. I would also like to inform the distinguished guests that the third lecture will be on our Prime Minister, Shri Lal Bahadur Shastri. The first Prime Minister of India, Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, was one of the chief architects of modern India, and his role in the Constituent Assembly was very important. He not only proposed the objective resolution on 13th December 1946, which shaped the preamble of the Constitution, he also provided broad guidance to the process of constitution making by heading 3 of the major committees. Pandit Nehru is widely acknowledged as a democrat who built the convention and institutions of democracy in a newly independent India. He was an able parliamentarian who helped nurture the spirit of democracy. He was an institution builder. As Prime Minister, he founded a series of institutions such as All India Institute of Management, Sciences, Indian Institute of Technology, Indian Institutes of Management, Indian Statistical Institute, National Institute of Design, Oil and Natural Gas Corporation, Indian School of Mines, National Book Trust, Sahitya Academy, and many other academies. He also founded the Planning Commission and adopted planned economy as an instrument of wealth creation and social equity. Economists and historians may have a view regarding the pace of economic growth achieved through socialistic pattern of planned society, but the fact remains that the trend of self-reliance was strongly laid then. As a nation builder, Nehru also played a crucial role in encouraging much needed heavy industries, dams, irrigation, other irrigation plants, which he described as the temple of modern India, the Bhakra Nangal Dam in Punjab being the most important example of this kind. Shri Nehru was an architect of non-alignment movement. However, as an instrument of foreign policy, it did come under severe stress during Indo-China War in 1962. Shri Nehru also strongly advocated for the independence of Afro-Asian countries. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we look forward to the address from one of our most erudite personality in the country and a thinker, Honorable Governor Shri Arif Mohammed Khan.
Honorable Chairman of Nehru Memorial Museum and Library, Shri Nrpendra Mishra ji, Surya ji, and what a distinguished audience, very respected Shri Karan Singh ji, Professor Mehraj Sahab, former Vice Chancellor, Professor Makhanlal ji, Kapil ji, so many distinguished people. I really feel honored and privileged. Thank you very much, Nirpend Bhai, for your kind invite and giving me this opportunity to speak on our first Prime Minister, legendary freedom fighter, commander of Mahatma Gandhi, Swargiya Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru. I belong to the generation which grew up believing that Pandit ji is our chacha. I had never seen him, but as a student of class 7, wept bitterly when we came to know that he has passed away. And it was not just me. I was in the hostel. Most of the children were crying bitterly. a versatile personality like Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, you can keep speaking about him as long as you want to. He was not only a great freedom fighter, he was our first Prime Minister, and as rightly pointed out by Nirpendra Mishra ji, you can see his imprint on almost on everything. Therefore, instead of making a sweeping survey, I will confine myself to a very specific area, and that is where people have many confusion, and Panditji himself has a great role in creating that confusion. And that is his religious faith. His views on religion. Because he was there at a time when religion was used to break the unity of this country. When religion was used by the colonial masters to create deep divisions in the society. India was not considered, was not accepted as a nation. India was viewed officially as conglomeration of communities. Why? Because nobody has the right, we do not recognize that anybody has the right to represent all Indians. If you want to come and represent something, come to us and speak about your community only. Every text has a context, and text must be read in that context. Today, particularly those like me who are born after India became free and more younger generations, we have given to ourselves a constitution drafted by our representatives, which does not recognize community as the building block of the nation. It recognizes individual citizen as the building block of the nation. So today the situation is different. But when you consider anything, then do not forget the context in which many positions were taken, many statements were made. Secondly, even if whatever confusion prevails, for which I have already said that he was no less responsible for creating this confusion. Even if that is true, one thing is certain. When we read his writings, it becomes clear that he adored India. Despite saying that he was a queer mixture of East and West, he affirmed, he wrote, "India clings to me as it clings to all her children in innumerable ways. I am first and foremost an Indian." The way he wrote prose in praise of India, his word cast a spell on the readers in the same way as the poetry of Kabir and Tulsi in praise of Lord Ram, or Surdas and Raskhan waxing eloquent to express their devotion to Bhagwan Krishna, leaves the listeners enthralled. It is true that Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru was a self-confessed agnostic, not atheist, agnostic. In fact, in 1929, he had admitted that although he was born a Hindu, he does not know how far he is justified in calling himself one or speaking on behalf of Hindus. In 1940, before offering Satyagraha, he came to Bapu at Sevagram. It was a farewell call, and a feeling of sadness was there in the air. As Nehru rose to leave, Gandhi's wife Kasturba blessed him, saying, "God will look after you." Nehru retorted back with a smile, "Ba, where is God? If he exists, he must be fast asleep." Ba was a little taken aback. But Bapu, who understood Nehru, chuckled and remarked, he said to Ba about Panditji, "He is near," he told her, don't get so shocked by his remark, "He is nearer to God than many who profess to be his worshippers." His personal friend and Defense Minister Dr. K.N. Karju made a similar observation, which was never contradicted by Nehru himself. Dr. Karju wrote, and I quote, "In higher sense of the word, Nehru is definitely a religious man. In terms of Bhagavad Gita, devotion to incessant action for the welfare of others, unmindfulness of one's own personal concerns, comforts, and ambitions, disinterested action without attachment to the fruit of action are the essence of highest religion. And in that sense, Jawaharlal is a religious man. He is incessant action personified. Karmanyava adhikaroste ma phaleshu kadachan ma karm phala hetur bhuma te sangos tva karmani. Your right is to work only, but never to its fruits. Let not the fruits of action be your motive, nor let your attachment to be inaction. Pandit Nehru himself quoted approvingly Dr. John Dewey, the American philosopher, who has defined religion as the religious is any activity pursued in behalf of an ideal and against obstacles and in spite of threats, personal loss because of its general and enduring value. But in this regard, there is something of profound significance, because there is another story which relates to his younger days. There were times in his life when he was deeply drawn to religious texts and ideas. One such period was when he was in jail in 1921-22 during the non-cooperation movement. He has written 2 letters from Prayagraj jail to Bapu in the early months of 1922. These letters do not appear in the selected works of Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, nor they have been included by the biographers, nor the recent collection of Nehru Gandhi letters published by Oxford. These letters may have been overlooked by scholars because they rest not in papers here in this museum, but with Gandhi papers in Ahmedabad. The first letter is dated January 9, 1922. Here, Nehru mentions what he has been reading in prison, namely mostly religious books. He writes, "I have read Glover's Jesus of History, a book of absorbing interest, have also done a good deal of the Bible in the light thereof. I have begun seriously reading the Ramayana, Tulsi too, and Kabir's bhajans and the shloks from Bhagavad Gita serve as memory exercise." This is very important. Shloks from Bhagavad Gita serve as memory exercise. It can serve memory exercise only if you have, which he says, which I do while walking in the evening. But that you can do only if you have already memorized those shlokas. Then only you can use them as memory exercise. I have, as you might well imagine, regularly done my prayers, regularly retired at the time appointed by you, and been out of bed at the same hour when, as Guru Nanak says, the heavens rain nectar, Amrit Kal. Later in the same letter, Panditji writes, "My days are passed among the saints nowadays, and I should love to finish as well as I can my knowledge of the Bible, the saints, including Christian saints, the Ramayana, and the Mahabharata, including, of course, Bhagavad Gita. I have some secular literature with me, no doubt, but that takes, frankly, a subordinate place." The second letter was written 4 weeks later, on February 19, 1922. Panditji was recently joined by some Khwaja Sahab of Aligarh. "It is a privilege to learn Urdu from Khwaja," writes Panditji to Gandhiji. "It is such a stately script, symbolic of easy splendor of Muslims. Apart from teaching Nehru the Urdu script, Khwaja gave him a few couplets from Urdu poets every day and important verses from the Quran." This is writing to Bapu. And now next, a small para, but very important. I find it, the words which he has used are very important. "I in my turn," this is the good which Khwaja Sahab is doing to me, "and I in turn give Khwaja Sahab something from the Upanishads and propose to give him something from the Gita." I mean, these are very simple lines. But after describing that he is teaching me this and this, and in turn, to pay him back, I propose to do this. I want to give him something from Upanishad and from Bhagavad Gita. Meanwhile, with another fellow prisoner, Ram Nareshji, it was in there only, Panditji had finished the selection of the Ramayana named Balkand and Ayodhya Kand. I hope to finish the rest in about 20 days, wrote Panditji to Gandhi. As I finished Sundarkand in Naini jail, and the rest is plain sailing. It is a joy to read the Ramayana every morning when a quiet, early hour of the night is selected for reading it. One almost melts in the liquid love of Tulsi. Ramayana is more a spiritual autobiography than a poetic history of Ram. When these letters were written, Nehru was in his early 30s. He had lately fallen under the spell of Mahatma Gandhi, whose own faith was both religious as well as eclectic, drawing from several different sources. The three religious thinkers Gandhiji most often invoked were the Vaishnav poet Narsingh Mehta, Jain philosopher Rai Chand Bhai, and the heterodox Christian Leo Tolstoy. It may have been Bapu's influence that made the young Nehru in jail soak himself in texts and traditions of different faith traditions. However, as he grew older, Nehru began to see that while it must be kept far away from politics, religious faith could still play a role in an individual's quest for truth and tranquility. In his last years, Nehru often visited Dehradun. He came partly because he loved to view Himalayan ranges and also to spend time with a spiritual leader who lived at Rajpur Road in Dehradun. Her name was Ma Anandamayi. A Bengali Hindu by birth, her faith was ecumenical. She interacted with people on a regular basis. She interacted with, in fact, if I had more time, I would have tried to explain that there is no use to use word her faith was ecumenical because essentially the Sanatan teachings are ecumenical. But here it is written, I'm only quoting, Nehru's visits to Anandmayi Ma were kept hidden from public. Much later, the historian and biographer B.R. Nanda, who knew Nehru well, confirmed that towards the end of his life, the Prime Minister had developed greater interest in spirituality and had regular interactions with Anandmayi Ma. Dr. Radhakrishnan, I remember having read it, Dr. Radhakrishnan has also said the same thing. He said that in later years, in fact, he uses the word that he had become very soft and to some extent melancholy. And most of the time, he would come and discuss things which were not political, which were spiritual. In his youth, Nehru had spent time reading about the saints. In his old age, he was spending time conversing with this great saint, spiritual leader, Anandmayi Ma. It is notable, however, that Nehru sought not religious men, but a spiritual mystic who lived in seclusion. He had no time for the clerics, at least in his last days, but had lot of time for Anandmayi Ma, who, like his long dead mentor, Bapu, did not believe that any single religion or religious text had a privileged pathway to God. And this Panditji himself has written again and again. And when he gives expression to this sentiment, don't you recall the verses from Shrimad Bhagavad Gita to the same effect? Yoma pashyati sarvatra sarvam cha mayi pashyati tasya aham na pirnashyami sacha mena pirnashyati. What the two spoke about in Dehradun is not known, but they met quite often. It further complicates our understanding of Nehru, the self-confessed agnostic. He was clearly not an atheist, as some of his admirers and also some of his critics have made him out to be. In his 20s and 30s, Nehru was deeply moved by Gita, by Tulsi's Ramayana, and by some Christian texts as well. In his 40s and 50s, when he was at the apex of his career, Nehru believed that by rationality alone, man would understand, if not conquer the world. He, like his guru Bapu, firmly believed in the proclamation of eternal verity made by Rig Veda more than 4,000 years ago. Ekam sad vipra bahuda vadanti. The truth is one, and those who seek that truth and are able to realize that truth, they describe it variously. They believed, as ancient India believed, that diversity itself can be a source of strength, and that diversity implies both acceptance and respect for all people, because all people cannot be confined to one single interpretation of reality. Mahatma Gandhi and Pandit Nehru both believed that the essential message of Sanatan, Dharma ka marm, is to be ever devoted to the pursuit of truth and accept and respect all versions of description given by various seekers of truth. For they realized the truth of Sanatan teaching, that realization of supreme truth is beyond human comprehension, and therefore it is beyond words. The Sanatan tradition tells us, when once you have experience or realization, then it cannot be expressed adequately through verbal symbols or logical propositions. Yato vacho nivartante aprapya mansa saha. Words alone will not be able to express that realization, that experience of the Supreme Spirit. They return, when you try to describe it in words, they return baffled, unable to bring out the wealth and immensity of that Supreme. So said Buddha, Anaksharasse dharmasse shrutika deshna chaka. Where is, if that Supreme Spirit is beyond words, then what is there for us to preach about it or try to make others understand about it? For the truth which is inexpressible by letters, there is no scripture, there is no teaching. Each man has to find it himself. It is the lonely seeker. And when he attains the Supreme, he becomes radiant with a different kind of countenance. He is a man possessed of God. It is therefore said that it is not possible to express this mystery of Godhead in words, and how it has been described in the Upanishads: agrahyam, alakshanam, achintayam, avyapadeshiyam, ekatma pirtiya yasaram, pirpancho pashamam. We can only express it in the words of Mandukya Upanishad that it is inexpressible, Shantam Shivam Sundaram. Man is still in the logical stage. Man wants to express himself through words, through categories. So Srimad Bhagavat, not Gita, Srimad Bhagavat tells us, Brahmeti Paramatmeti Bhagavana iti Shabdiyate. Brahma, the transcendent reality, which goes beyond space and time, which cannot be expressed through categories of logic, that God above all gods, that is, which cannot be. I mean, there's a beautiful Urdu couplet. जो जहन में घिर गया वो लामका क्यों कर हुआ और जो समझ में आ गया वो खुदा क्यों कर हुआ. But this should not lead us to imagine that this supreme reality is inaccessible. It is there deepest in our being in the form of Atmana. Atma. Atmana is yourself. Paramatmana is the deepest self in you. The same, when you have this great experience, when you realize that supreme truth, then how one responds to that, what impact it has on that person, that seeker of truth, it has been described beautifully in Srimad Bhagavad Gita. Nabha sparsham deepta maneka varnam, vyapta nanam deepta vishala netram, drashtva hi tuam pirviyathi tantratma dhirtim navindami shamam cha Vishnu. Which means on seeing you, on realizing, that is why in Indian tradition it is not important to say I believe in God. What is important and what is required is I have experienced God. I have seen God. I have realized God. So the translation of that verse is, on seeing you, the cosmic form, I see you touching the sky. You are so humongous that you touch the sky, shining in many colors, with mouth wide open, with large fiery eyes. I am terrified at heart, and I find neither courage nor peace, O Vishnu. This is what happens to a seeker of truth when he has traveled some distance in that direction. Panditji, what an ardent believer of the ancient Indian culture and values, ethos and ideals. Somewhere he writes, and I would like to quote Panditji, if I was asked, what is the greatest treasure which India possesses and what is her finest heritage, I would answer unhesitatingly, it is the Sanskrit language and literature and all that it contains. This is a magnificent inheritance, and so long as this endures and influences the life of our people, so long will the basic genius of India continues. If our race forgets Buddha, the Upanishads, and the great epics Mahabharata and Ramayana, India would cease to be India. Now, more than 1,000 years back, it was said, Bharatasya pratishte dve, Sanskritam Sanskriti tatha. And further it was said, Sanskriti Sanskritashrite. The Indian culture depends on the Sanskrit language. And here, if I may quote Gurudev Rabindranath Tagore, what ringing words. He said, I love India, not because I cultivate the idolatry of geography, not because I had the good fortune to be born in her soil. But I love India because she has, through tumultuous ages, saved the illuminating words, saved the living words which issued from the illuminated consciousness of her children. Iqbal has also said, यूनानो मिस्रो रूमा सब मिट गए जहां से, बाकी मगर है अब तक नामो निशा हमारा. कुछ बात है कि हस्ती मिटती नहीं हमारी, सदियों रहा है दुश्मन दौरे जमा हमारा. But Iqbal admits, acknowledges that despite very hostile environment we have survived. But then he says कुछ बात है. अब ये कुछ बात है, it sounds bit, sort of full of conceit. हमारी कुछ बात है. Gurudev explains it in lucid terms. What is that kuch baat? He says, because we have successfully saved the living words which issued from the illuminated consciousness of India's children. Because we have been able, and that is the reason why India is a continuous civilization. The Greece civilization may be more ancient than us, Egyptian civilization may be more older than us, but they have lost all connection. Today's Greece, today's Egypt, almost inhabiting the same geographical area, but they have no living link with their past civilization. On the other hand, in India, we still draw our inspiration from ideals, from values, from ethos, which were set by our thought leaders thousands of years back. Similarly, I am only trying to address that confusion, and that is why I have collected all these episodes. After Mahatma Gandhi's assassination, what he spoke, the words are to be noted. He said, "It is a shame to me as an Indian that an Indian should have raised his hands against Bapu." And the second sentence is, "It is a shame to me as a Hindu that a Hindu should have done this deed and done it to the greatest Indian of the day and the greatest Hindu of the day." Are these words, they do not remind us what he actually was? And these words became even more significant when we look at the tribute which was paid by London Times to Mahatma Gandhi after his assassination. The London Times in its editorial had written, "No country but India and no religion but Hinduism could have given birth to a Gandhi." Nehru has written in The Discovery of India, the present and the future. No, he has written, "Our lives are encumbered with the dead wood of the past. All that is dead and has served its purpose has to go. But this does not mean a break with or forgetting of the vital and life-giving in the past. True culture derives its inspiration from every corner of the world." The words are ringing words because they remind you of the Vedic proclamation, "Ano bhadra kirtavo yantu vishvata." True culture derives its inspiration from every corner of the world, but it is homegrown and has to be based on the wide mass of the people. The day of a narrow culture confined to a narrow, fastidious group are gone. Then he also raises this question, who is Bharat Mata? Sir, how much time I have already taken? Already? Sir, I'm going to conclude. I'm very sorry. The number, this. Thank you very much, Dr. Sir. Dr. Sir, thank you very much. But this is such a fascinating subject. He has written, "Who is Bharat Mata? For whose victory we are shouting? What is India? What is Indian way of life? What sort of people were our ancestors? How indeed did they live? What gave them the courage of mind and body to probe the mysteries of universe, tame the wild forest, sail the rough seas, and take Indian culture to far-off shores?" Here I am reminded what he was Vice Chancellor of the Mysore University, and he was classmate of Swami Vivekananda. He has used a beautiful term, Professor Birjendranath Seal. Professor Birjendranath Seal. In his book, he has used a beautiful, beautiful phrase. He himself has coined it. India, ever aging, never old. Ever aging, never old. Bharat Puran hai, viradh nahi hai. It is ancient, but not old, because weakness is associated with the old age. India is not. And the inspiration has come from the Gita Bhashya of Shankaracharya. Shankaracharya, Adi Shankaracharya, while commenting on a shlok of Srimad Bhagavad Gita, that shlok, na jayate miryate va kadachi nayam bhutva bhavita vana bhuya ajo nityam shashvatoyam purano na hanyate hanyamane sharire. So that he has said that Puran means ancient but not old. In the Gita Bhashya, in his Bhashya, he has written that Puran means ancient, but it does not mean old, because it has that wonderful capacity to renew itself, to revive itself. Pura api, the words which Adi Shankaracharya has used are Pura api nav evati purana. So Panditji is almost saying the same thing, where when he asks this question, who are we? What India stands for? Finally, I would say that those who know him closely and were familiar with his thinking had no doubt that he was a firm believer and proud of India's ancient cultural heritage. And here, if I may mention, all our national institutions, right from Parliament to Supreme Court to 3 wings of the defense forces to all the universities, everywhere, all the mottos, Panditji was a self-confessed agnostic, but all the mottos have come from Vedas or Upanishad. Here a question arises. The question is that he was taking these pearls of these lines from the Vedas and the Upanishad because he was ritualistic, or he was normal kind of believer in them, or he considered these books as a storehouse of wisdom. I am certain in my mind that he considered these books as a storehouse of wisdom. He was clear in his mind that the Sanatan approach is where our culture has not been defined either by race or by faith tradition or even language. Our culture has been defined because of the Sanatan value by Atma. Aham Brahmasmi Tattvamasi. Pragyanam Brahma. I am Atma Brahma. All inclusive. Not only that, like Europe, we did not start with the votes of men only. Europe, till about say 100 or 150 years back, they believed that women do not have soul. Black people do not have soul. Animals do not have soul. Therefore, we have a right to exploit them. On the other hand, our civilization was defined by Atma, all-pervading Atma, which is common not only to, this is something which is common between human beings, animals, plants, insects, everybody. And we have to, the purpose we can understand. The purpose is to make us realize that we are all spiritually linked. Nothing happens in isolation. The basic Sanatan teaching highlights the fact that the consequences of the karma, even the gods are not spared. So, if even the gods are not spared, therefore, if there is a lesson which we must learn and we try to internalize, that karma follows you. And I think I should conclude with a small anecdote from Anand Ramayana, which says that after Bhagwan Ram came back from Sri Lanka, Ram Raj was established, people were happy. Then suddenly one day, a dog came into the court and complained to Bhagwan Ram that somebody had hurt him without right, unnecessarily. Inquiry was ordered immediately. Report came. His complaint was right, justified. Then Bhagwan Ram asked this dog, "What do you suggest? What punishment should we give to this man?" And the dog replied that this man presently is Mahant in a mandir. Promote him and make him chief Mahant. So everybody in the court laughed and said, "You have come here to get him punished, or you have come here to get him promoted?" He said, "You are all human beings. I have taken this birth in this form, but I have my meritorious acts are so many that even as a dog, I have Chaitanya Atma. I know what I was in the past, and I know what is going to happen to me. Though you are all human beings, but you are not aware. In my last birth, I was the chief Mahant of a temple. And when you are chief, then you have no accountability. And when you have no accountability, you forget the consequences of your karma. Therefore, I have to live in this life like this. So, I don't want a small punishment for him because he has hurt me very severely. I want him to suffer the same fate as I am suffering. And so there's a great lesson moral in that story. That we all have to be watchful, careful about every action we take, whether somebody is watching us or nobody is watching us. Because ultimately, the karma consequences will follow us. Thank you very much. You have listened to me with so much patience. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Honorable Governor Sir, thank you very much for that highly enlightening lecture on the religious and spiritual life of Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru. I would request everyone to be kindly seated. The Honorable Governor has kindly consented to answer a few questions. We have time for only 3 questions. So I would request those who want to ask questions to raise their hand, and I would further request them to be very, very brief. Yes, please, Professor Kapil Kumar.
It's a very small question.
Sir, please use the mic.
It's a very small question that why a person like Nehru is all his education and his command over the English language deviated from the meaning of secularism that is there in the dictionary in English dictionary, that break from religion and went into a policy of appeasement of religions in his policy making in India.
Sir, I have always considered and I shall continue to be a student all my life. And you are a teacher. So it is not possible for a student. But then I am not replying to your question, but I will share my understanding with you. And my understanding is that at no point of time, in fact, he has even used the words that this is not a right term for us. He has said it somewhere in 1962, not only in a public meeting, but even in the parliamentary party of the Congress party, that secularism is not something which we have imported from any other country. Secularism, where I disagree with him, is when he said that this is our ancient Indian way of life. Because by secularism, what he possibly thought was acceptance and respect for diversity. So he said, since it was our way of life, therefore, we did not have a particular word for it. Therefore, we use the term secularism. But Dr. Radhakrishnan has made it amply clear that our secularism is not secularism of which is practiced in any other country. Even there, the contours are not uniform. They are different. It has to be, personally, when I said that where I do not agree is that I feel we had a term for secularism, our own term, and that is Bahuda Sanskriti. Ekam sad vipra Bahuda vadanti. But somehow, that time, very learned people, very knowledgeable, but sometimes something slips out of mind. So possibly, because the situation is clear, admittedly, maybe more, but admittedly, more than 4,000, Panditji has written 5,000 years, old civilization. But generally it is admitted 4,000, everybody admits. A 4,000-year-old civilization. People will not accept some foreign idea that through which they can govern themselves. If secularism became acceptable, it was only because it met the requirements of it was in consonance with the Indian way of life. If democracy became successful outside the Western Hemisphere, including America and India, democracy became successful, it was because we have the concept of spiritual democracy since last few thousand years. And that is because it was, even I would say, even about the integrity, unity of India. If Sardar Patel, who did marvelous work in uniting India without shedding a drop of blood, all the states acceded to Indian Union. If you look at it more closely, it was Shankaracharya in 7th or 9th century, who, young man, comes from Kerala. This country was politically fragmented, but he created a strong awareness that India may be politically fragmented, but India is spiritually and culturally one unit. It was that awareness which was created by Shankaracharya, which came really as a great help to a statesman like Sardar Patel, and he succeeded in creating the India that we see today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Any other question? Yes, please. Please use the mic, Professor Deval Singaroy.
Sir, it's quite enlightening and also engaging lecture. I have only one confusion. It is adding to what you were talking about. Being spiritual and religious, how it adds to his confusion? I'm unable to understand.
How it?
How it adds to confusion to Jawaharlal Nehru. Because he's spiritual, he became religious, and we know that he was having a lot of respect for the Saint tradition of India. But how it is contradictory and confusing?
No, actually, confusion is mostly in our minds because we have accepted the translation of dharma as religion. Dharma is not religion. There are two lines. Iyam visrishtiriyat abhuv yadi va dadhe yadi va na. This is from that Nasadi Suktam, wherein it has been said, who has created this universe? Who knows about it? Who is administering it? Who is running it? Does the one who is sitting above knows it, or even he does not know that who is doing it? So basically, more you study this tradition, more you become curious, more you become seeker of truth. There is no finality, and there is no insistence that this is the only way to salvation. Yad vibhuti mat sattavam Shri mad urjitam evava tad eva avagacha tvam mama tejom sashasambhavam. This tradition tells that salvation is not only through one. Wherever you see extraordinary power, extraordinary beauty, extraordinary brilliance, know that this brilliance, this power, this beauty has been created out of a small part of my Tej. So, but because we have accepted religion to be the translation of dharma, therefore we feel that only a fixed, prescribed line, those who follow, they are religious. No, they are not. At least the tradition of this country does not say so. And if you look at it from that angle, he was a seeker of truth.
I can see a lot of students and young people around. Yeah. Would you like to ask a question? Yes, please.
Good evening, sir. My name is Pankaj Parashar, and I'm from K.R. Mangalam University. And so I totally agree with you when you say our religion and our secularism, the way we practice here in India is very different. And Nehruji finally moved towards spiritualism and being a believer. So my question is, why couldn't he or the people around him stop the division of this country purely on the basis of religion, sorry. Why couldn't they do more on that?
Yes. Yeah.
I have been I've been here speaking for more than 30 minutes, and I think mostly I was praising Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru. You want me to be critical of him? Please, don't ask me this question.
I think, yes, please.
Thank you, Arif Saab. I had read your book, Text and Context, and I had commented to you that it was like a breath of fresh air. But today, after hearing you on Jawaharlal Nehru, you have seen after 75 years what's been happening in the subcontinent and the concept of two-nation theory itself going downhill. How do you see Nehruvian perspective in the contemporary context in the subcontinent?
Well, you have almost repeated the same question, but I would say that our national leadership, and Panditji was, please sit down, and he was among the stars under Mahatma Gandhi. They were all opposed to partition. Why? Not only because ours is a big country and part of it will be taken away, but our tradition and our culture is based on a paradigm which is all inclusive. We can accommodate anybody and everybody. There is no need, as I said earlier, democracy, if it has survived in India, it is not because we have accepted something which has come from some foreign source, but it is in sync with the concept of spiritual democracy. which we have in India since time immemorial. Time immemorial. So they were opposed to actually this two-nation theory again. It is a subject which requires independent discussion because it was not merely figment of the imagination of Jinnah alone. There are so many other factors which are also involved. But unfortunately, this tragedy happened, and Maulana Azad was one man, even at the time when finally Congress Working Committee had accepted the proposal and agreed to the division of India. Around that time, he has given an interview to an Urdu magazine of Lahore. The name was Chattan. And in that interview, he has said, he has not only, quoting from very authentic sources, he says that this idea is absurd of two-nation theory. But more than that, he said because the idea is absurd, therefore the consequences will be more absurd. And 10 predictions in that book you will see, because you say you have read it. I have translated that interview into English. He has made 10 predictions about Pakistan. The first prediction came true within 10 years, and these predictions he made before Pakistan became a reality. This interview was given at the time when the picture had become clear, but much before 15th August 1947. And he says that Pakistan army will take over within a very short period of time. That became reality within 10 years, less than 10 years. And then he said that Pakistan, because of the incompetence of the leaders, they are not really leaders. Most of them are big zamindars and landed gentry, not capable to run a country, and because of them, army will take over. And then he further says, one of the prediction is that Pakistan will groan under the weight of foreign loans. Today, that is what is happening. That is what is happening. All 10 predictions have come true. Thank you.
I think we have finished today's quota of questions, which the Honorable Governor had kindly agreed to take. May I now request Dr. A. Surya Prakash, Vice Chairman, Executive Council, Nehru Memorial Museum and Library, to extend a formal vote of thanks.
Respected Mr. Arif Mohammed Khan, Honorable Governor of Kerala, respected Mr. Nrpendra Mishra, Chairman, Executive Council, the Director, NMML, and other distinguished guests. I wish to convey my sincere thanks to Mr. Arif Mohammed Khan, the Honorable Governor, for delivering the lecture on the life and legacy of Jawaharlal Nehru, the first Prime Minister of India. And as all of you here who have listened to him, I'm sure you will agree with me, sir. Your brilliant exposition on Nehru and religion has given us new insights into this facet of Jawaharlal Nehru. It has also given us some insights into your erudition and your learning, and it was really an excellent lecture, which was invaluable for all of us who are here today and who have listened to you. Given Mr. Khan's rich legislative experience, he began his legislative career in UP 46 years ago, and his strong commitment to liberal and secular values, it was only natural for us to approach him for this important lecture. I have been acquainted with Mr. Khan's political journey since his election to the Lok Sabha in 1980, and I must confess that I got my first lessons in Muslim personal law when I heard his erudite arguments in the Lok Sabha in defense of the Supreme Court's judgment in Shah Banu case and against the law introduced by the government to neutralize the Supreme Court verdict. Ironically, that law passed by Parliament in 1986 was called the Muslim Women (Protection of Rights of Divorce) Act. Such was his commitment to social reform that he quit the government on this score. Since then, he has been unwavering in his commitment to core democratic values, including gender equality. I do believe that the deepening of India's democratic traditions hinges on the work of public leaders like Mr. Khan. As you are all aware, more recently in 2019, Parliament further amended this law to make instantaneous and irrevocable talaq illegal in the country. This is the second lecture in the Prime Minister's lecture series instituted by the Pradhan Mantri Sangrahalaya to highlight the contribution of our Prime Ministers. I thank you, sir, for accepting our invitation and being present on this occasion. I take this opportunity to thank the Chairman of the Executive Council of NMML, Shri Ripendra Mishra, for his invaluable leadership and guidance in the Sangrahalaya's activities. Finally, a very special thank you to all members of the audience who have joined us this evening to listen to the Honorable Governor. Jai Hind.
Thank you, sir, for extending a formal vote of thanks. I would request everybody to kindly be seated for a moment. Now, before we conclude the program, I would request everybody to stand at attention for the national anthem. With that, we conclude the program, and I invite everyone for the high tea, which is right outside the auditorium. Thank you.